Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the show. So this is part 2, law number 2 of 5 that I'm doing. So I just the brief overview, a reminder if you haven't watched the or listened to the podcast before this. I'm very into the spiritual laws. They're eternal, they're permanent, they're things that we can latch onto. They are way down at the core. If you want to get closer to the truth, you simplify. So that's my jam, man. So this is where I am. So there are many lists of spiritual laws out there. I decided to use Bashar's / Daryl Lanka, who channels Bashar, his spiritual laws, because there's only 5 of them, so they get right down to the core, and that's what I like. And I thought it'd be good for a podcast. So, law number 2 is, and you can just search, Bashar's spiritual laws or 5 spiritual laws, whatever. If you want to look at the other ones. I'm not going to go through every one on every podcast. The first one I gave a little overview, and I'm just going to hop into each law for the podcast. And I'm keeping these a little shorter too, around 30-40 minutes probably. So law number 2, everything is here and now. Time is a linear progression. Past and future is an illusion. Well, wait, I may have misread that. Time as a linear progression. Not sure if I said it that way. My brain skipped. Time as a linear progression, past and future, is an illusion. All experiences and parallel realities exist simultaneously in the present moment. These are deep, man. These are deep. So they're hard. They're hard to grasp in your brain. So drop down into your body, into your heart, take in conceptual information that way if you can. Depending on the person, I mentioned this in the last one about how to take in information through your heart center. But every person is different. Some people, you can take in information through your third eye, that conceptual center. Do what works for you. But if you're having a hard time wrapping your brain around stuff, stop using your brain, because it's not really capable of grasping this stuff. But we are filled with intelligence. Literally, we're filled with intelligence. Scientifically, they've actually proven that, there's more intelligence, like your heart makes more decisions than your brain does. That your stomach makes decisions independent of your brain, like what to do with certain foods. There's intelligence through our whole entire body. And that's just here on Earth, fleeting, that we're just finding out about. So, we've got that. And then we're also connected to the eternal. We are eternal, which is law 1. And so we're connected to the eternal. So we're connected to divine wisdom, to divine intelligence. Akashic records, all that stuff. So we're connected to this. So we can take in, especially conceptual information, better by not just depending on our brain computer database that we have. So, whenever I think about time as an illusion, I always think about children. Being a parent teaches you so much, and I was amazed with my son because, it was just him and I all the time, right? So it was like there wasn't, I mean, of course, he spent time at his mother's when he was young, but when we were interacting, it was just him and I was basically the adult and he was the kid in every situation. Nobody else handled any other situation other than me when we were together. And so I was always the adult and he was always the kid. So I was always teaching responsibility and how the world works in a physical sense, the temporary world, all this stuff. And I would pick up on things. And one of the things I noticed was how difficult it was to teach him the concept of time. And I was like, I wonder why that is. And it's because it's an illusion. It's not real. Like when you talk to small children, they can understand concepts very well. Like that's what they're doing. This is a big misconception with children in general, is they think adults don't think children can understand big concepts or concepts in general, really, a lot of times. That's not true. Sometimes their brain isn't developed enough to handle intellectual knowledge and reasoning in certain ways. But concepts, they understand concepts extremely well. Like that's what we're doing. When we become adults, what do we do? Like, what's this inner child work people are talking about? What is this trauma work people are talking about? What are the triggers that are set in place in childhood that we're all trying to work through as adults? Everything that we're trying to work through as adults was put in place when we were children. At least the foundation of them. Maybe we experienced different technical experiences externally throughout our lives that we need to work through, but conceptually, it was all implanted in us as children, because we're trying to, when we come here on earth, we understand our eternal nature and that everything is love, and we can be completely vulnerable and trust blindly, and it's just beautiful. But then we start learning and being conditioned to life here on earth, and taught to be certain ways and develop our personality and who we think we are and all that stuff. And that's conceptual work. So basically, but depending on who you ask, between the ages of 4 and 7, between the ages of 0 and 8, children are learning their belief systems, who they think they are, especially, like I said, we can build off of these things even later in life, but the foundations are built between the ages of 0 and 8. So like those are all conceptual foundational bases. So if we start believing we're not good enough, that is a foundation. And then a lot of our experience will work off of us not being good enough. If we adopt a belief system that freezing is the best move when we are under threat, then we are going to freeze for the rest of our lives. Why? That's a concept. Under attack, freeze. That's a conceptual thing, because it's a concept, because you can do it in many different external circumstances. You can do it when you're physically being threatened. You can do it when somebody says something you don't like. You can do it when somebody calls you a name. You can do it when your parents are yelling at you. You can do it when the teacher gives you a hard time. You can do it at recess. You can you can do it in unlimited myriad of ways, but the concept's the same. So children can lock onto concepts very easily. But then we try to, concepts that are some of the earthly concepts, what I'm saying is they can do conceptual things. So you can teach them about spirituality and self-love and all kinds of things at a very, very young age. But certain earthly concepts, and I don't even know if I want to use the word concept when I'm talking about time, but I am for now, just because I can't think of a better thing to use it. But time, it takes them years and years and years and years and years to understand time. And I noticed that I was explaining time to my son over and over. We have to leave in 15 minutes. Okay, you can play this game for an hour. The drive to the family's house is an hour and a half. We have to go now. Anything that had to do with time, I was constantly throwing it at him and it wasn't sticking. And I probably threw the concept at time towards him in hundreds of thousands of ways. Like, think about it. I mean, just one day, if you're alone with your kid, the concept of time may come into play, I don't know, 100 times in one day. It's possible, depending on what you're doing. Probably less than that in most days. But it's just an immense time. And I'm not the only one doing it. Then he's getting it at his mother's house. Then he's getting it at school. School, the classes are timed. Everything runs on time in this transitory world. And these kids just don't get it. I don't even know what age they actually end up getting understanding the concept of time. But I would say it has to be somewhere maybe around 8 or 9, I think. I mean, they start grasping it a little bit before that, but to the point where they just drop into acceptance and they're able to kind of manage their own time. That's at probably at least 8, maybe 10, 12 years old. And they are exposed to this concept over and over and over and over and over and over again every single day. And it takes them that long. It's because it's an illusion. It's not real. So there is no part of their eternal self that can make sense of it, because it doesn't technically exist. There's nothing to make sense of. So it's strictly a brain activity. My past is just a memory. It's not real. It's not happening. It doesn't exist right now. It doesn't exist. My past doesn't exist. Contemplate this stuff, people. That sounds like a neat statement that you read in a meme, oh, the past doesn't exist, and the future isn't here yet. And the present moment is a gift. That's why they call it the present. Yeah, that's a cool meme. But what does it mean? Do you implement these concepts into your life? Do you actually contemplate them and try to get your body in alignment with the reality of these things? That's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to induce in going over these laws. I'm trying to get you to contemplate them. I'm trying to get you to conceive of them on a very deep level. I'm trying to get you to use something outside of just your intellectual knowledge and use something deeper and grasp onto these things and contemplate them so you can bring them into your existence, because that's where the peace really lies. The future is how often do we experience anxiety or what we call worry about the future? It's just it's fear of something that doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. It's not happening. It's it's not happening. It literally doesn't exist. So like we another version of this is one of the main things that holds us back from a spiritual awakening is because we think we have to do something to induce a spiritual awakening. We don't. It just happens in the present moment. Like right now, as I'm speaking right now, if I close my eyes and just open up, I could literally transcend reality right now, earthly reality. And I could drop into an eternal reality right now, right at this moment, and just be completely enlightened. Completely enlightened. Well, my whole reality is based in the eternal. That could happen right now. And if it ever is going to happen in this lifetime, where there's either a spontaneous, overwhelming God consciousness, a spiritual awakening that whether it's a small spiritual awakening, a medium, or a large or all-encompassing spiritual awakening that people have had, and people have had them, it's just going to just happen right now. So oftentimes when we're meditating or when we're thinking about our spiritual path, we're like, like we're unconsciously putting it out into the future. Oh, I'm going to work on my meditation. I'm going to get better at meditating. Then I can slow my mind down and then maybe I can have a spiritual awakening. No, you can have a spiritual awakening right now. Like right now. You don't have to wait until you can meditate better. You don't have to wait until you read 14 more books. Like my spiritual awakening happened 22 years ago. I was I was a homeless alcoholic whose body was shutting down and my brain was so dried out, like they call it wet brain. I had the beginnings of wet brain because like I could tell that I couldn't use my brain as well as I used to. Like I would stutter. I was stuttering more and more when I spoke because my brain, I had the beginnings of wet brain. Like your brain gets so dehydrated, which is ironic to call it wet brain when it's actually dehydrated brain. But that's what happens is your brain is dehydrated for so long that it starts actually dying off and you start having, severe issues. And I was starting to have that stuff. Like I couldn't, I couldn't like read books and take in information like normal people. And yet I had this gigantic spiritual awakening and I had multiple of them, like, so how did that happen? It happened in the now. I didn't do things. uh, I mean, of course, I was going through the steps and I was taking in information to the best of my ability, but that wasn't very well. Like I'm not saying that we don't have to put I hate using the word try or effort or something because those aren't spiritual terms and it implies the wrong thing. But I mean, of course, I was putting my energy towards wanting it. I wasn't just sitting there going like, "Oh, I think I'll watch People's Court next." Like, my, I was showing up. I was going to meetings. I was being taught stuff, but I couldn't retain most of what I was being taught. Like I was just mentally incapable of it, but I could open up. I was opening and I could take in concepts to some degree. By no means did I actually think that I was grasping them, and I'm saying this to try to kind of give you guys hope that a spiritual awakening isn't, it's easier than you think, but it's also not what you think. It's not you don't do, like I said, I mean, I know I took the steps, so technically I was doing some stuff, but it's not in the way you think. Like it's like we think that if I understand things well and then I do them well, then I'll get something that's good. I didn't understand most of what I was hearing. I didn't do my steps technically well. I did them to the best of my ability. But that's how the universe works. It's just you don't have to worry about if you're good enough. You're always good enough for the universe. You're always good enough for God. God made you. You're always good enough for God. So like so doing some of these things, meditating and doing some of these things to make yourself more vibrationally friendly for a spiritual experience. Well, sure, of course you can do all those things, but we think that those things are it. You know, Man was not made for the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for the man. Doing a bunch of things doesn't get us to a level of accomplishment. It's not about doing, it's about embodying to the best of our ability. It's about opening, and those can happen at any time. And you know when they happen? Now. That's when they happen, in the now, and not necessarily after you've done all these things that you think you need to do. I mean, even in the steps, it says the 12 steps, it says in the promises, there are promises that you will experience. And these promises actually come true. Why? Because they're spiritual. So it says in the promises, you will be amazed before you are halfway through. You want to know when my biggest spiritual awakenings happened? Right after my 5th step. You know what halfway through is? Your 6th step. You will be amazed before you are halfway through. After my 5th step, I was amazed. I was actually a little bit amazed before that because I started having some small spiritual awakenings, but I had the big ones after my 5th. That's when everything blew open. So it wasn't because I finished the steps, and it wasn't because I did them well. It was because I just was trying to do something that I had never done. I was trying to open up to something bigger than myself. I didn't understand how to do it. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't even have a concept of what the heck it was or what I was doing. But I attempted it anyway. And then all of a sudden something happened out of my ignorance. And this is that, I think that's the important point. It happened out of my ignorance. It didn't happen out of my knowledge. I didn't understand something, and then all of a sudden then I woke up. No, I just woke up in the now, in the present moment. I couldn't have planned it. I couldn't have done 13 things to make it happen. Oh, everything is here and now. And we don't realize how much time messes us up and takes away our spiritual awakenings, quite honestly. I think that's one of the main things that delays our spiritual awakenings and takes our spiritual awakenings away is this concept of time. Because if we knew that it would just happen when I'm in alignment, it would just happen. And then, okay, well, how do I get into alignment? You can't put words to that. If somebody could explain, like, if you could do certain things and then all of a sudden you'd have a spiritual awakening, then somebody would have bottled that by now and sold it, and everybody be having spiritual awakenings. It's not that. It's an inside desire to open up to something bigger than us, even though we don't understand it. It's not about understanding. It's about opening, and then, and not trying to induce it. I wasn't trying to induce a spiritual awakening. I didn't even know what the heck a spiritual awakening was. And I sure as heck didn't think I was going to have one. So I wasn't trying to do things to induce something. I couldn't even wrap my brain around how it could possibly work. So I wasn't trying to make it work. I was doing some stuff. Read this. Okay. Do you understand it? Not really. No. Okay. Read this. Okay. You understand it? Not really. Okay, you did that. Are you different? Not really. I don't know. Like that's kind of how I was. And then all of a sudden stuff started going off, you know? And it happened in the now. I didn't have that concept that, oh, well, I need to transcend all my trauma and then maybe I'll awaken. Then maybe I'll find peace. Oh, I have to, learn what this teacher says, and I have to understand this book, and I have to do that. Like I didn't have any of that. I wasn't even capable of grasping what I was doing or what it would look like. None of that. It wasn't a mental construct. I wasn't trying to achieve something. So, even though the 12 steps is kind of the closest thing that I've ever seen of something that can induce a spiritual awakening, the reason it doesn't induce a spiritual awakening in people all the time, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, is because people, like if somebody turns it into another thing to do on an intellectual level, they're not going to have a spiritual awakening because you're not doing spiritual work. I was too stupid, too brain dead, too out of it to think that I was capable of achieving anything. So that was in my benefit because I wasn't trying to achieve something. And achieving something is in the future. If I have to do something to achieve something, that means it's in the future. Because I haven't done the things that I think I need to do yet to get there. See, that's what blocks us. You could be sitting on a spiritual awakening, and I'm guarantee you, some of you are. Your inner being, your eternal consciousness is ready to awaken, and you're holding it off. You're delaying it because you think that there's something else you need to do. You're not awake yet, so there must be something you need to do to become awake. That's what blocks it, because doing things takes time. And there is no such thing as time. So like you could have a spiritual awakening right now, but you think that the fact that you're not in the middle of a spiritual awakening right at this particular moment means you need to do something. You don't need to do something. Opening isn't doing. See, this is why I don't like using trying and efforting when I'm talking about this, but sometimes I have to because of that's just life. Trying to convey information, but it's spirituality implies non-efforting. Go within. Okay, go within real hard. You either go within or you don't. You can't go within hard. Go in the corner and remember real hard. Go forget. Open. Like you can't really effort to do those things. You have to do the opposite of effort. You have to relax. So this is how some of these concepts can help us is when we start letting go of these things, start letting go of a linear progression that's holding us back, thinking that we must need something that we don't have in order to awaken, because otherwise we'd be awakened. No, that's not how it works. We have everything that we need. We just have to allow it to come up. Well, how do you allow? Oh, I'm going to go allow real hard. Okay, every spiritual awakening inside of me, I allow you really hard to come out. I'll put energy, my effort towards you coming out. That like you can't do it. Whenever we put effort and energy towards something, everything constricts, our muscles tighten, we push. That's the opposite of allow. So this is how understanding that there is no time and everything is happening right now, it opens up the possibilities for everything. Like when a couple of years into my spiritual path, I would contemplate things and try to get concepts. And back then, I was very open, so I was very good at getting concepts, and most of them I still use today. One of them was I was like, okay, what's the spiritual path going to look like? Like, am I going to become completely enlightened at some point? Because I knew I wasn't completely enlightened, even though I was pretty enlightened at the time. I was so open back then. It was cool. But I was like, okay, complete enlightenment. Will I reach that? I'm like, I don't know. Okay, well, what would that look like? I don't know. Okay. How can I help it? I don't know. How can I hinder it? Well, I can hinder it by putting, like, not labels, but um qualifying it. Like, I knew that I could limit my spiritual expansion by putting mind-made conceptual blocks on it. By thinking I needed to do something, or by thinking it was going to take a certain period of time, I knew that I could block my spiritual awakenings by doing that. Why? Because our thoughts create our reality. If I think that a spiritual awakening is going to take at least 10 years, then it has to take 10 years because I adopted that as a belief system. And the universe doesn't have the possibility of overriding my free will. So it has to take at least 10 years. Well, what if my spiritual awakening was only supposed to take 5 years or 1 year or 1 month, or it was going to happen instantaneously? Now I just said, well, it's probably going to take 10 years. Now I just blocked myself from experiencing it sooner than 10 years. Okay, so I don't want to block myself. So I want to be open to whatever God feels is best. If an instant awakening is best, cool. If it takes my entire lifetime, cool, whatever. Like, I don't know. God's will, not mine, be done. So I'm not going to put a limit on it or, a period of time. I'm just going to say I am open to whatever's in my highest good. I could spontaneously awaken in this moment right now at the snap of my fingers, or it might take a lifetime. I don't know. But I will open and allow to the best of my ability. And I won't get, I'll try to catch myself on when I start implementing these concepts of time that block myself and puts my awakening off at a future date after something occurs. And it's also cool with manifestation too, like I'll wrap it up with this, but like with manifestation, once we understand, like a lot of times when people are working on manifestation, they have difficulty grasping that they could have something that they want, right? And this can help that, because if you're like, every alternative reality exists, there exists the possibility of you being a multimillionaire now. That possibility exists. Like, people become multimillionaires overnight. It happens all the time. So that possibility, even if it didn't happen to some people, it is a possibility. So once we know we're not trying to create something, we're not trying to make something happen, that it already exists in a parallel reality, because everything exists in a parallel reality. Everything that ever has been, ever will be, was already made. This has been taught. So everything already exists. So we just need to align to that reality. And then all of a sudden it's there. Okay, sweet. Now, it's easier said than done, of course, because we have all these mental blocks, and this is one of the ones that we're trying to work through, So this can be a building block on that. If you start contemplating and grasping the concept that everything is here and now, and this life you dream of having a romantic partner that you can spend the rest of your life with, or different financial situation, or whatever you're dealing with, whatever your heartfelt desires are, if you can start understanding that it already exists, then you can start feeling grateful for it. It's already there. It already exists. You don't have to create it. You don't have to do a bunch of things to make it happen. Now, sometimes when we take action, just to clear the ego aspect out, we can take action which helps our beliefs because we believe to take action, and then we can induce something that helps us induce something into happening. But it's not actually necessary. It's not actually how the universe works. It already exists. It's there. We just need to align with the reality of it. That's all. Once we align to the reality of it, it becomes our reality. So we're not creating things. We're not making things out of nothing. That sounds like it takes a lot of work. We don't have to. We just have to align to it. Same with our spiritual awakening. We just align to it. It's about alignment, not time. Start contemplating the concepts of alignment, dropping into alignment with things working through alignment. Once you start understanding that concept, you're going to start understanding more that time isn't real. All right. I think that's a good place to start. Stop. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. Thanks for listening, peeps. Hopefully this helps. Take care and stay tuned for Law 3. Peace.